This is the Plainview, the ship that flies.
This video has been a long time coming. I first became aware of the Plainview about a decade ago. She was one of the largest wrecks on the DNR list at the time, but clear on the other side of the state, not visible in satellite imagery. The listing just said a 183-foot vessel called the Plainview at Clark's dismal niche on the Columbia River. I had no idea if she was a derelict pleasure craft, barge, fishing boat, or something else. Turns out the answer was something else. In 2012, Leslie and I stopped by and paddled the wreck as the first stop on our California trip, and my initial impression was very much, what the hell is that? At first, her mast and rounded hull looked like a submarine, but the other side resembled a ship. Her bow and stern appeared to have been cleaved off of the giant blade, and what remained of the superstructure made no sense. Haze gray paint hinted at a possible Navy origin, but she didn't look like any Navy ship I had ever seen. The most distinctive features were two massive hydraulic cylinders, reaching out to each side of the vessel, their ends hanging into space. It wasn't until some years later that I stumbled on the answer. I was flipping through a site of listicles on various interesting things and found one on experimental U.S. Navy hydrofoils. A hydrofoil is a type of boat that raises up out of the water on a foil section similar to a wing. By getting the hull out of the water, they can be tremendously fast, but the power needed to accelerate such a large object to lifting speed is immense. One of the ones listed was the USS Plainview, once upon a time the largest aluminum ship ever built. A lot of things suddenly made sense. The mast was intact, but 1.5 full decks had been cut away, along with the bow and stern, presumably for recycling. The large rounded protrusions were mounts for the hydrofoils, and the hydraulic cylinders were mechanisms that raised them out of the water for slow-speed cruising or to dock. The USS Plainview and the Navy's Large Hydrofoil program were a response to the Soviet development of the Project 705 Lyre-class submarines beginning in 1960. Known to NATO as the Alpha class, these innovative subs used titanium hulls and liquid metal-cooled nuclear reactors to reach underwater speeds of 40 knots, or 47 miles an hour. Western submarines had no chance of keeping up with them, and even US and NATO surface ships could not match these speeds. One proposed answer was to use hydrofoils as anti-submarine hunter-killers, as foil-borne ships could reach as much as 70 knots. The U.S. Navy contracted with aircraft manufacturers Boeing and Lockheed for a series of experimental hydrofoils to test out the suitability of the concept. Most of the development centered around the Seattle area where Boeing was based due to large numbers of naval facilities in the calm and protected waters of Puget Sound. First into the water was the USS High Point, built by the J.M. Martin Shipyard in Seattle under contract to Boeing. The 115-foot patrol boat was powered by a single gas turbine engine and could reach 48 knots on her foils. The High Point was very much an experimental vessel and never saw combat service, but did serve as a test bed for the use of guided missiles and torpedoes at high speeds. The Plainview was laid down at the Lockheed Shipyard in Seattle on May 8, 1964, and was launched in June of '65. Due to her highly complex and innovative systems and chronic labor problems at the shipyard, she did not enter service until 1969. At cruising speed, she was powered by a pair of diesel engines driving podded propellers, similar to an outboard motor. To transition for high speed, the pods would be raised and 3 hydrofoils lowered, one from each side and a third at the stern. When foil-borne, she was propelled by a pair of LM-1500 gas turbine engines derived from the J-79 used in the contemporary F-4 Phantom fighter. These gas turbines drove the largest titanium propellers ever cast up to that time, which were mounted on the port and starboard hydrofoils. Together, the gas turbines produced 28,000 horsepower, which propelled the 220-foot ship to a maximum speed of over 60 knots and lifted her hull completely out of the water. The Plainview gave the Navy valuable experience in operating large hydrofoils and helped develop tactics for high-speed anti-submarine warfare. During her career, she spent 268 hours foil-borne flying across the waters of Puget Sound. Ultimately, it was decided that helicopters on board conventional frigates and destroyers could handle the threat of high-speed Soviet submarines, and development of large hydrofoils was halted. The Plainview was decommissioned in 1978, and her engines, foils, and other specialized hardware was removed for possible use in a future vessel before the hull was sold for scrap. She was towed from Bremerton to Schnitzer Steel on the Heilbus Waterway in Tacoma, who sold her to an Astoria fisherman for conversion to a factory tender. Those plans went nowhere, and in 2004 she was drug across the Columbia to her current position and partially scrapped. The bow, stern, and upper decks were cut away and recycled, leaving the disfigured carcass we see today. As a historical footnote, the Navy's smaller patrol hydrofoil program did continue for some time. After the High Point, the next vessel in the line was the USS Tucumcari, which introduced water jet propulsion to hydrofoils. The Tucumcari and another hydrofoil, the USS Flagstaff, deployed to Vietnam, where they were used to intercept supplies being smuggled by sea from the north. The Tucumcari ran aground in November 1972 off the coast of Puerto Rico and sustained so much damage that she was scrapped soon thereafter. The Flagstaff was transferred to the Coast Guard for evaluation in 1974 and spent 3 years with that service. Reviews of the vessel were generally positive, but high operating costs and an incident where she hit a whale at high speed, sustaining $250,000 in damages, caused the Coast Guard to return her, and she was soon sold for scrap. The final evolution of the patrol hydrofoil concept in the U.S. Navy were the 6-strong Pegasus class, which carried 8 harpoon-guided missiles and a 3-inch automatic cannon. These vessels saw service in the Caribbean on drug interdiction missions and in the Mediterranean, but never found their role within the larger Navy and were retired in 1993. Interestingly, the original prototype, the USS High Point, survives in private ownership and is for sale nearby at Tongue Point in Astoria.
The center post holds the hydraulic rams that raised and lifted the foils. And then there was another mechanism, I think, to control their pitch. A little bit of a look inside there. explore this whole section. I'm not sure what that hole's all about. These over here, large circular holes, are the exhaust uptake. So that's what remains of the USS Plainview, one of the cooler wrecks down in this part of the world. She's actually pretty easy to reach and can be seen from the road, but also tends to be very well hidden, because unless you know exactly where to look, it's easy to miss. I was able to just clamber down from Highway 4, find a piece of beach and launch here. But yeah, neat old wreck, neat history, and let's go find another one.
The rain and wind of a Puget Sound storm is no deterrent to Plainview, which just rises above the occasion, or at least above the choppy waters. As Plainview and her crew learn to know each other, this largest and most powerful hydrofoil vessel will add to the U.S. Navy's knowledge and capability to meet the challenge of the sea as well as the threat of potential enemies. Incorporating the best of the state-of-the-art in high-speed ocean transport, marine and aerospace technology, Plainview points the way to a new dawn in Navy ships.